let's talk about why. So another factor in the Syrian government's collapse. This is a good analysis. There was no the support from Iran, which arrived thanks to the foresight of then IRGC commander Qasem Soleimani, who understood that Syria was, I mean, and he said this in a public speech, which has been circulating, it was the last Arab state that refused to cave to the West demand to cut off Iran completely. It also refused to cut off the Palestinian cause in the way that Jordan, for example, had. Jordan is like just jailed a former legislator for 10 years for helping supply weapons to the Palestinian resistance in the West Bank. Syria wasn't going to those lengths. And number three, the forces of Jolani and Baghdadi, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and all of their various iterations, including a group that was actually in a coalition with the CIA-backed bandits known as Nouriddin al-Zenki, called the Bin Laden Front, that they posed a direct and existential threat to Iran's strategic depth, that Iran could not allow these Takfiri forces to operate on its borders. And so Iran participated in a very meaningful way in defeating the Western and Gulf and Turkish-backed forces inside Syria. Iran did not participate in a meaningful way in repelling these forces' advance on Aleppo. And I think this is one of the key debates. Why? Why did this happen? And we can help better understand this through the alliances that Bashar al-Assad and his government were seeking to forge after the dirty war ended, when they were still denied an economic victory because Syria's entire economy had been placed on sanctions and was effectively under siege. So this is IQ Mideast Center. Shift in alliances last year was kept a secret. I'm sure there'll be debate about this, but we want to understand the broader outlines. Assad was visiting the UAE, the Saudis. The Saudis do not want Jolani to take over. They don't want to see Turkey gain a foothold in Syria. And neither do the Emiratis. They don't want, especially like Ikhwani Muslim Brotherhood forces, which are backed by Qatar, their regional enemy, to gain any influence. So they were meeting with Assad, and Assad was clearly meeting with them because he needed cash. There was no money left. They could barely make their payroll. He shut down the office of Ansar Allah in October 2023. This was after October 7th, allegedly. And there are rumors that Ansar Allah asked Assad to open a Golani front, a front in the south of Syria against Israel, and he refused. The highest IRGC commander in Syria, Mousavi, was killed in Damascus. That was during the insanely provocative Israeli strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, which led to the first Iranian retaliation. December 2023, Syria allegedly begins to restrict IRGC activities. This is amid dozens and dozens, like weekly Israeli attacks on Syria, especially targeting Iranian facilities. He's warned by the Iranian leader of empty Saudi UAE promises and that there will be efforts to topple him. A lot of this is coming out of Iranian media close to Quds force. Restrictions on weapons supply to Hezbollah was reported in July. Then in September, Hezbollah commanders were assassinated. This would be the head of Hezbollah's military council, Fuad Shukar, was killed. This was a major assassination, which I don't know. It didn't lead to an escalation on Hezbollah's part, which is another, morning after consideration or question that is being raised. September 27th, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah is killed a day after either visiting Syria or communicating with Assad. Again, this is a rumor that's going around. I've seen the rumor take the form of Assad was offered money by the UAE to supply critical information on the whereabouts of Nasrallah. I have no idea if that's true.
But how would Assad know where Nasrallah is?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm just addressing the fact that this is
that makes sense.
circulating.
Like Assad hasn't been to Lebanon in, I don't know, in years. So that's just like, and as if Nasrallah would tell Assad where he is. I mean, certainly, I think, I mean, I think one of the points of the dirty war in Syria was to draw in Hezbollah to bleed it, right? That's the point of proxy wars, and that's what succeeded. And then that made Hezbollah vulnerable to penetration. So there's a connection there. And this is the problem. There's all sorts of rumors now, and some people are saying that Assad did offer to help Hezbollah in some ways, and others are saying he didn't. I mean, there's criticism from members of the Axis of Resistance that he was our weakest link. I mean, there's so much back and forth now. It's hard to get a read on what's actually accurate. But certainly, ever since October 7th, and ever since the dirty war in Syria began, I mean, Hezbollah has taken a lot of hits. And certainly I would draw a connection between the fact that Hezbollah, sacrificed so much inside Syria and maybe was penetrated there to the fate that befell Nasrallah in terms of him being killed. But
yeah, I don't know if Assad was the guy who penetrated Hezbollah. Yeah. And when Nasrallah was killed, it was right in the center of Dahiya in a bunker that he frequented underneath an apartment complex, burrowed underground, but easily accessible by Israeli GBUs.
Yeah.
So last month, Larjani, chief of Ayatollah Khamenei advisors, met Assad in Damascus to discuss the imminent threat by terrorists after Iranian intelligence. Assad downplayed the danger and refused to cooperate. This is really circulating in Iranian media. Here's that meeting. We don't, we're not claiming to have confirmed this. After Aleppo was stormed by HTS, the foreign minister of Iran arrived in Damascus, Araghchi. This was after visiting in October. And he was seen actually like dining at a fast food place in Damascus. On December 3rd, Jafad Ghaffari, IRGC commander, who they call the second Soleimani, Soleimani's replacement, issues an assessment, total failure of the Assad army, of the Syrian Arab army, and lack of a desire to put up a fight. Refusal to meet Iran envoy Larjani on December 6th. Then a day later, Damascus falls. And what I'm getting in translated form through Iranian media is a version of this. I can show other analyses which echo this one from Iranian commentators that I respect, who I think have, been proven correct in the past. Iran determined that it wasn't worth losing 5,000 officers for an army that wasn't willing to fight, and a government that couldn't mobilize or motivate its own loyalists. And it's really because they had been ground down for so long by the economic war and by the dirty war itself, where they lost so many soldiers and so much materiel, that Iran decided, we're not going to take these losses. We're going to pull back. Another factor could also be, a key point here is Hezbollah. They lose the land bridge from Iran to Lebanon when Syria is taken by these forces. The land bridge that came down through Latakia into Lebanese territory that supplied them with arms. But Israel was always trying to attack convoys, prevent arms from going in, but obviously lots of weapons got in. Hezbollah has advanced a lot. It has its own domestic drone production. It does have its own domestic missile production. It clearly has benefited from Iranian supply of ballistic missiles and know-how. Iran also has developed enormously, as we saw during Operation True Promise 2, when it destroyed targets, military targets, or attack military targets with its ballistic missiles. So it may not need, in order to deter Israel, who knows? It may not need Hezbollah to the same degree. Hezbollah may have its own domestic production capacity. There's also the fact that Russia will continue to keep its bases in Syria, it appears. There's discussion over that. Russia claims to be in negotiations with HTS leadership. And just having been in Syria, I heard so many complaints from supporters of the resistance axis that Russia was one of the key forces restricting their activity, and that Russia maintained a not just a deconfliction line, but a direct line with Israel in order to allow Israel to attack resistance forces and make sure they don't hit Russia at the Tartus base or the Hmeimim air base. So you have all these factors leading to the collapse of the Syrian military, and Iran has now pulled back. Remember what Netanyahu said after the ceasefire in Lebanon. He said two things. One, Syria is going to have to be held to account, in his view, because the IRGC was still operating there. And he's going to turn his focus to Iran now that he doesn't have to focus on the northern front with Hezbollah. So now Syria is kind of out of the way. Israel's handling that thanks to the quote unquote revolutionaries. And next, I think Iran will have to demonstrate its capacity to deter Israel after they've lost strategic depth, having lost Syria as well. But it looks like the Syrian government was already toast long before HTS decided to attack, and Iran was trying to warn them.